Connected Consumer.
Hi, my name is Rosie Alpino, and I am one of the hosts for Parks Associates' podcast, The Connected Consumer. This podcast is all about Parks Associates' data-driven market insights on emerging consumer technology products and services, featuring our talented analyst team and industry leaders bringing new and innovative products to market. Throughout this podcast, you'll get an inside look at the latest industry trends focused on the connected consumer, home automation and security, energy management, independent living, and digital content and video services. In this episode, we will shift over to the marketing world, my personal favorite, by listening in to our recent B2B marketing webinar featuring Parks Associates' very own President, Vice President of Marketing, and other key industry PR and marketing leaders. This webinar highlights content marketing strategies and insights on how to stand out in this digital age and capture the attention of a variety of audiences through executive conferences, trade shows, media outreach, and other content marketing services.
Great. So thank you so much for joining us today. We are here to talk about the evolution of B2B marketing, and we have seen so many changes over the past year and 18 months as a result of COVID-19. So today, I'm really excited to have executives from Castor Communications, Bob Gold Associates, Parks Associates, and Questex to join us for this discussion about the evolution of B2B marketing. I want to introduce myself. My name is Elizabeth Parks. I'm the president of Parks Associates. We are a market research and consulting company focused on emerging technologies for the consumer and SMB markets. For 35 years, we have studied and analyzed and produced market research with a special focus on consumer adoption for new technologies, specifically impacting consumers' experience within their daily lives. In addition, we typically host 6 in-person executive conferences each year focused on the areas we cover, and we also support over 100 industry events as a media or research partner. In addition, we have custom marketing content that we work on in partnership with our clients, like white papers, webinars, and podcasts. So today we're going to talk about the dramatic changes in B2B marketing and talk with our panel about how to get results, what's coming next with in-person versus virtual events, and then how to look forward and plan for 2022 as we continue with some uncertainty. With that, I'd like to go ahead and recognize our panelists briefly. They're going to give us a short intro later, right before we start the conversation, but I do want to thank them for their time and leadership in the marketing and communications world. So first, let's just take a look at what's happening in the world of B2B business. Currently, up to 40% of people are working remotely, and we expect that trend to continue as companies figure out their new hybrid model of remote versus in-office work. And in 2020 and 2021, we've got research noting that in-person sales calls have dropped by 50%, and that the way companies are purchasing has dramatically changed. In fact, 1 in 4 people say they're willing to spend up to $500,000 through e-commerce or remote-only contact with salespeople. Further, there are major shifts in demographics of B2B buyers, and now 3/4 of them are millennials, a new generation to work with. The top challenges for marketers, I think, remain at what they always are, which is generating traffic and leads, and then proving the ROI on that investment, as well as securing enough budget for those activities. The COVID impact has been huge, and we've certainly seen that play out in events. So when we recently, Parks Associates, surveyed our audience, and we had about 500 responses from business executives that we interact with on a regular basis, and asked them about the role of in-person events. 65% say that in-person events play a very important role in their business. And 86% report that they play a very important role. The vast majority really looking to events to help that B2B marketing and sales effort. We asked a follow-up question on the value of virtual events versus in-person. making it absolutely clear that 2/3 of executives responding that virtual events are not as valuable as in-person events. I think we've all learned, though, in the past year as we have been forced to move to virtual experiences, that really there's just a different value that comes from virtual events versus in person. And that's something that we're going to dive deeper in today with our panelists. We did want to see what businesses or executives are thinking about in 2022. And we see a lot of people looking to events playing a more important role in 2022 than they did in 2021, with 53% noting the importance of events for their company's activities versus 29% last year, or this year rather, and for their planning. And finally, we asked what the preferred structure is moving forward, given that we've all had these virtual experiences, the lack of in-person events, and our business executives report back 79% see that in-person events and virtual sessions are the preferred structure moving forward. There's also event budgets set aside. There are dollars earmarked for events. And so we do expect companies continue to look for in-person experiences and look to the value of virtual events to expand their marketing reach. Thank you for letting me share some of that data today. Now I would like to go ahead and introduce our panelists. And I'm going to start off with Kimberly Lancaster. So thank you, Kimberly, for joining us today. Kimberly is the president and founder of Castor Communications. So I'll turn it over to you for an intro.
Thanks, Elizabeth. I appreciate you having us. As mentioned, am the founder of Castor. Castor is a 20-plus-year-old PR digital media firm. We're interesting and different in the sense that we sit solely in the technology space with clients across IoT, embedded, enterprise, alliance, and organizations that drive those markets. But we've also been in smart home before it was called smart home, back when it was just called the Jetsons home. And so it's kind of a niche space that we've served with about, more than a third of our clients being very specifically across smart home and IoT. So as we've done this and over the years, we've been kind of at the forefront of some of the pandemics and crises and problems that have hit. We were just started when 9/11 hit. We were here when the builder market and the home crises hit, which was really tremendous impact into this space. And then clearly we just came out of the pandemic and all of the things that we learned for PR, digital events, and marketing across all of it. So I think this conversation will be very interesting in terms of applying some of the things that we've learned to help companies accelerate as they come out of this and move forward.
Well, great. Thanks for joining us. And I know you've got a wealth of information, so we're excited to have you. Next, I'd like to have Mindy Sue introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Mindy Sue. I've been with Parks Associates for the past 13 years, leading marketing and our executive conferences, in addition to our social media efforts. And Parks Associates, Elizabeth had mentioned, we are a market research firm. We're specializing in emerging technologies that find solutions for the consumer and small business markets. In addition to our research products, we help executives with white papers, with thought leader opportunities, with webinars. And we really help companies expand their visibility and really amplify their targeted message. And so thank you for including me on this panel, and I really look forward to the discussion with these other great, wonderful leaders. So thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Mindy Sue. Next, we'll go to Rhonda.
Hi, thanks for having me. And I too, Mindy Sue, am excited to have this conversation with Bob, you, and Kimberly. So I'm at Questex, Senior Vice President Performance Marketing. And if you don't know Questex, it's a very different company actually today, not just because of COVID, but they brought in new leadership back in 2018. And so 2019 was really spent kind of moving away from this siloed organization where they had events over here and media over here. And the new leadership really brought together an integrated market so that we could serve our audiences, our customers 365 days a year and create those strong communities. And going into 2020, QuestX was 70% physical in-person events across these markets that you see on the screen, and 30% digital marketing services. And so it was a big shift as we were really ramping up with our new model in 2020 to have to transition into a new world of no physical events. So I'm really excited to talk about that and how we've made that pivot. I know the overused term of 2020, but we've really seen a growth. Like 2019 to 2020, we saw a 21% growth in digital revenue. And then even though we know in-person events are coming back, we've done 7 to date, and we have about 30 planned for the second half of this year. Our virtual events are still booming. We're right now about 52% over in virtual event revenue sponsorships for the first half of 2021, then all of that virtual event sponsorships for 2020. So it's exciting times with changes still happening.
Well, great, thank you. Certainly a powerhouse serving the industry with as much information through your conference engagements. Let's go ahead to Bob. So Bob, love hearing from you. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you so much. Thank you really, Elizabeth and Mindy Sue, for putting this fantastic panel together. I am inspired by Kim and Rhonda and what they do, as well as what Parks is all about. So I've had my agency for 24 years. I'm the old man in the room. I survived COVID, 24 days in the hospital on intubation and all that. And today we're running a PR and marketing agency that is completely data-driven. Today we have to be data-driven. We're working in ways that we have to measure, evaluate, and show ROI of our KPIs, as Kimberly likes to say, and we really have to move forward. We are in a new roaring 20s, and what you just heard from Mindy and Rhonda and Elizabeth and Kim is how we're changing and moving rapidly forward. It is just like 1920 all over again. Does anyone on this panel know what made the 1920s roar? Pop quiz.
Prohibition?
Flapper.
So it was 3 technologies that changed the 20s. You had the internal combustion engine, which became affordable, so there was public transportation and Henry Ford Model Ts. You had the electrification of homes, and it wasn't for lighting, it was for things like washing machines and electric irons. In fact, Edison gave away hot point irons that could always stay hot as an electric iron to get those hard to work cuffs and collars. And of course, that's a major company. And it was a time saver. We had massive time saved, and it changed everything, how we invested, where we live, how we commuted. Today, it's the same thing, massive technology, IoT, cloud, big data is changing everything. Let's even talk about crypto. Today, we have to be nimble and fast because we are on racing horses. Anyway, just had to share that.
Well, that's great. No, thanks, Bob. I love that perspective, and adapt and pivot. Certainly, we've heard those words a lot. I think we will continue to hear them for the next little while as we all figure out what post-pandemic means. And as it plays out. But let's go ahead and get into the conversation here. B2B communications have been changing probably continuously, but especially maybe over the past decade as we've really seen digital come into play enormously. But COVID-19, as we've noted, just did something completely different. So Rhonda, if you can share with us, what are some of the biggest differences that you've seen overall in B2B marketing activities? And certainly of the event perspective is a good one, but just in general, what are the shifts you've seen in the past year or so?
Well, I think, we've been talking about omni-channel marketing and being where your customer is, whether it is, on a website or via an email or on a social channel. But I think last year, with everyone sitting in front of their computers, at home all day long, I think that becomes even more and more important. And I think traditionally B2B and particularly B2B marketers tend to really like use email as the go-to communication tool. And I don't think that just works anymore. And kind of an example around events is that we actually implemented a technology last year for registration. And so when you could social media register, so instead of just putting in your email address, it would link to your social media account. And so that referral from individuals who are attending our virtual events literally shot up and we did, we did 26 large virtual events last year. And about 54 smaller virtual events. And it impacted the registration by about 22% across all of our events. And it's that me saying that I'm going and my network going, oh, if Rhonda's going, it must be good. So like just really stretching out beyond those normal channels, I think is really become more and more important, and leveraging social. Bob, I think Bob, you
Rhonda,
have some.
yeah, did you build that plugin, or did you buy someone's technology? Because honestly, it happened to me when I went to the Stream TV show, and as soon as I registered, boom, I pushed it out it pushed out automatically on LinkedIn. That echo effect, I thought it was brilliant. How did that happen?
Yeah. Yeah, and so we do leverage Ingo. There's a couple of companies out there that do it. But I think the other thing we've been able to glean from that is that, if Bob registered and he actually drove, 50 more registrants, then you're obviously an advocate for our brand and something we can leverage even further beyond the marketing of that one event.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So the pre and post, there's so many things that are different today, like learning how to shake hands. That's kind of weird. I still want to do a fist bump or an elbow tap, right? And but the biggest change, which is what we're doing right now, is what broadcasters have made trillions of dollars on. The power of the 30-second commercial to tell a story in 30 seconds in video is unequaled. And the world has woken up to the power of video. And video consumes and penetrates every pore of our lives in multiple ways. And it's part of our storytelling now, just as what we're doing now. And I haven't invested in my little circle light. Do I need it? I don't know. But all the tools of making good video are suddenly critical. And those skills of editing and being able to push out have become, how do we change today's webinar into 50 segments that are snackable, biteable, bits of news and information that each of us is making? That's where we have to go. Anyway.
Yeah, well, Bob, I mean, you've got a great point, and certainly, the getting results is such an important thing within marketing, and be able to extend your the reach of the messaging. I know social media plays a huge role in that as well. 10, 15 years ago, we weren't talking about social media. Mindy Sue, I know you lead the social media team for Parks Associates. Can you share a little bit about the impact of social media around the activities you all have?
Yes. So social media is obviously a big part of what we do. Seeing those messages amplified over and over again, adding those infographics that get people's attention, adding those video marketing graphics that gets people's attention, even if you can't have the volume, but the text is scrolling at the bottom. So either way, you're seeing those messages come on automatic. Having that digital presence is very important. Our team meets weekly, and we review, what messages are getting high rankings, what messages need extra pushes, to be able to reevaluate that on a regular basis and help improve your outreach by having better messaging really helps. We also utilize a number of tools, Buffer, Hootsuite, if you want to schedule your messages to go out when your audience is online, it's fine to schedule stuff in the middle of the night, but who's reading those messages in the middle of the night? You want to make sure that your messages are being broadcasted when your audience is at its max. And so right now, Canva is a very easy tool to use and build those appeasing graphics, and then you can export them to your desired platforms. And that way, your messaging isn't cut off on the side. So really, social media is very important to what we do. It's more important now post-pandemic because people's inboxes are full. They go to their Twitter feed to see what's trending, to see what's really important, what's considered news, what hashtags are they following. So social media is very important.
Well, that's great.
Kimberly, if I can just echo that, today we're living in a world where we have to bring every form of communication into one place. Content creation is what you were just talking about, Mindy, in our own platform. What's on our website, what's in our social media, and companies like QuestX, from their events and their publishers and editors, create great content. But also Parks Associates does a fantastic job of building meaningful information that all of us can use over and again. And Kimberly, I know for the trade shows that you manage and your tech clients, it's critical, right? Because tech companies are the least savvy at creating video and content.
Well, I mean, they certainly have their struggles, but I think what you're saying, Mindy, about messaging is really one of the core parts of what's both different and critical to social, right? So messaging today, it has to resonate around like values. As a company, you have to have your values out there in your social, in your messaging, in what you're trying to do, because it defines who you are. And now you're judged on everything you say and do, right? We're in a cancellation society, and therefore PR, social, digital media, it has to be so on point. And my perception of it, as I've seen across clients, like looking across the past 18 months, that's one of the biggest shifts, right? What people did initially as shutdowns came, and how their messaging and social had to change so quickly. Right? And what you were saying defined who you were as a company and what values you held for yourself as a business, for your employees, safety, security, business prosperity, all of that came through in social. Social was the key to it because, like you said, Rhonda, people were drowning in email. Yes, we were all tied to our computers in a way that I don't think we'd ever felt before, that tether of I'm on it all the time, that on the inability to turn off. But we were all consuming so much, but you were so quick to see if somebody was off step, right? If somebody was like, why is this company doing that? What is happening here? Or the ones that stepped up. Hey, we've changed our whole business model, and yes, we used to make shading. Now all of a sudden we're making PPP for frontline workers. So that transition and putting that out on social was a really big deal. And that was one of the best amplifications for companies at that time, because it was where people saw the most. So social became really critical during the pandemic, and I think it's going to carry forward.
And I would just add, I think, bringing together what you're saying and what Mindy's saying, I mean, I think how you present yourself on social and how you present who you are is representative, but it's also kind of, Bob, to the referral conversation we were having. I'm working on a project with a team member, and we hired a consultant. This was just yesterday, and we're going through, like, if you could investigate these vendors, this is what we want you to build, this is kind of the presentation we'd like to see back. And a comment made by my colleague was, and can you look at reviews of what other people are saying on, like look up, like, what are their experiences? And so it's not just what you say about yourself, but how you make people feel and what they say about you. Yeah.
I just want to jump in and say, in 1996, when I started my business, we wrote the company handbook, and we talked about the one massive, dangerous atom bomb at every person's desk: email. The wrong email could destroy. And today, what we've already discovered is way beyond that. It's every platform of social media. The tone of voice can get you fired off a television show, right? So, how we get folks to manage their content, maybe we want to do some of our own, but maybe it's time to turn it over to professionals, because let's create editorial calendars and content that is responsible and clean and clear and acceptable and drives the overall brand and message forward.
Well, and you've got emphasis, all of you really placed on that storytelling and the ability to share information in a way that people want to consume it, whether that be a short form with social media or a video or a longer form like a white paper or even a longer webinar. I love, Bob, how you talked about cutting up an hour-long webinar into 50 pieces and then leveraging that content, kind of like your Thanksgiving dinner turning into however many leftovers you can make it. But let's pause on that. You know, Parks Associates is a research firm, and our clients definitely value the data that we bring that allows them to share this story with the industry on where certain markets are headed. Kimberly, I know, given your role at Castor, you work with a lot of specific companies, but also with alliances and other groups. And so maybe you can touch upon how you all work with research content and, intermixing that with any of your client work as well.
I mean, one of the big things that we have always found is that, data is core to how businesses function, right? Data can structure your audiences, how you're reaching them, where they are. But from the PR side, it's also about size of market and information that validates and quantifies what businesses are doing. So if you look at organizations, associations like Acedia as an example, or Z-Wave Alliance, those are both clients of ours, but they're in a position of being able to kind of like have the whole view of the market. So they're able to work with companies like Parks is a great example on collaborating and creating data resources that become part of education and training. But they're also then used out in the media, where the media can reference back to these true, subject matter experts who have done the time to get this data to move forward. And I think it's something that gets overlooked a lot, like depending on the size of companies and budgets and all of those factors, not enough companies are looking to data. They think just because I make this black box, I'm an expert on all black boxes and therefore I know everything there is to know. But they don't understand what they're not doing or what they're not applying is that aspect of what is that third party saying? What else is out there in the bigger scale of the market? And that is valuable on the PR side, which is the core of what we do. You pull together that data and you take somebody who's an executive and you put that voice, put that data into their voice, and it becomes true authority, right? So, we live in this day and age of what's true and what's not. Do facts matter? And data really helps that. Data helps support those points. And we've used it for years. From our end, our highest coverage rates and story rates often come from key facts and figures that are built up around storylines. And when you're building technology standards, you don't just go out and say, okay, everybody do it this way now. You have to build towards it. And having those layers to be able to prove that point moves so many companies forward. And I saw a big shift in that over the past year. A lot of companies who before might have been resistant to that idea are now going, oh yeah, we have to have that, because if you follow any big tech, that's where they come up. They come up with sales numbers, audience numbers. I mean, all they do is collect data on us, all of them. They all want data. So we as companies, we as smaller companies, mid-sized companies, should be thinking about how we're using data that we can access, whether that's about size of market, what our customers are doing, what our employees are doing. All of that confirms and validates you. I don't think a lot of people are doing it or doing it well. I think they can all do it better. So huge opportunity for Parks, obviously.
Yeah, well, we've been doing white paper and webinar projects for years and years, and love that kind of work in partnership with our clients. I know Mindy Sue helps lead the marketing for a lot of those projects, and so maybe she can comment a little bit on the reach that some of these longer form pieces of content or the longer webinars, how that can play a role in marketing plans.
Yes, and we have seen a definitely growth with the number of webinars and the number of white papers that clients are wanting to do, especially this year, which is great. You know, having that data to help develop that story, that, you know, we don't want somebody bringing a product to market that doesn't have data to back up. You know, if you're just rushing to the market to get something out, then you're really wasting a lot of money. You want to know what features are important to people, what products or what features failed for the last client. You know, we have a lot of tracker services, you know, if people are interested in OTT services or smart home. So, you know, we don't just research them one time. It's an ongoing process. You know, the markets are always changing, especially when there's big events, you know, like what we have experienced with the pandemic. You know, a lot of our research that was planned for last year, you know, we shifted it and put a COVID spin on it because that's what people wanted to hear. That's what the focus was. And so if you want to tell this story and you don't have the data to support it, you know, maybe your message will be okay, but your message will be that much more stronger if you have the right pieces to help tell that story. So, you know, and that just plays into having good content marketing, you know, good public relations, a good social media experience, and really developing those partnerships. So if anybody needs any analyst quotes for any upcoming press releases, please let us know. We're happy to help you expand your reach by including Parks Associates research.
I just have to jump in and ask Elizabeth, you and Mindy over the past 13 years have really grown a business that was started by your mom, right, Elizabeth? And so you're a second generation running this forward. And parks like Questex have had this massive growth. What are you both doing differently that's allowing you to be so on point, so much in tap with thought leadership, and really engaging a community? Your business at Parks is growing, and Questex is going to take over the world.
Well, yeah, thanks for that, Bob. Yep, Trisha did start the company 35 years ago, and I'll be celebrating my 23rd year. I'm coming up on that in August. And Mindy Sue has been a joy to work with for over a decade now. But, you know, our research is what drives us. So at our core, at our heart, we are a research firm covering these very specialized areas and, you know, have very long industry relationships. Like Kimberly, we go back before the smart home was considered the smart home. Back then, we were talking X10 and C-Bus and home automation. And the industry has grown up, and as it's grown up, so has our research and the data that we've provided. I think probably 10 years ago, somebody asked me about how, you know, are you all going to end up going out of business because of the internet? You know, people just go find whatever they want on the internet. And I said, well, actually, I think it's a great opportunity for us to shine because people are going to need information. And the internet is great, lots of information. But if you're looking for reliable data to make million or billion-dollar business decisions, you know, I would go beyond just the internet for your information. I mean, that it's that important. The companies that we work with are you know, making big decisions.
And I think it's really important for the media, right? You know, sitting at the core of what I do of how data and real information, statistics, metrics, numbers drive the media for having facts that they can check, right? So if you source a number, whether it's the size of a market growth or number of units sold, being able to prove where it came from versus honestly pulling it out of the air, it's much more credible. I mean, this matters in VC. If you're going to go into the venture capital, if you're going in and you're trying to fundraise, data is critical, right? They want to see what's out there, what the competition looks like, and how you build that forward. And as somebody who has been a part of big IR tours and done from fundraising all the way to taking a company public, data was the basis of how they did all of that. They had to prove it every step of the way, from angel funding to going public. And it's all audited, it's all looked, and none of it's coming as made up, right? So if you're not using valuable sources to your data and in your media house of what you're putting out, that's the foundation of all of that. The third-party sources that are referencing it. So it's a critical factor, for you, Elizabeth, I think you and I came in the industry at the exact same time. And, watching how even I think people looked at data, for me, it's 25 years ago to where we are now. I think it's grown significantly. And I would, if somebody said you were going out of business 10 years ago, I'd say, probably don't know how the internet really works.
Yeah, that's right. Well, listen, I want to turn this conversation over a little bit into the event realm, because events play a huge role for businesses. And as we've noted from the research that Parks Associates did with some of our executives, there's now this preference looking forward for virtual and in-person, and also this new term hybrid, which I think is still being defined. But Rhonda, we've got you here to help us understand, what does hybrid mean, and then what is 2022 going to look like, and then even beyond that, is virtual here to stay, and then what does hybrid mean, and then what's the role of in-person as we all get back, hopefully, to going to the in-person events as everything opens back up.
I promise I'll talk to all of that, but I first want to go back to Bob's question because of the data conversation. I agree with everything that Kimberly and you Elizabeth have said, but that, data goes beyond the top of the funnel and kind of giving you credibility as an organization. And for our success, Bob, a lot of it has been ensuring that data we collect, that data is leveraged in our communications, in our marketing mix. So we're not just sending messages to people about things they don't care about. And I think that transitioning into the event is very important in how we continue to be successful with virtual events, that we just don't invite everybody in our telecom market to the 5G Blitz virtual event next week, that we really understand who the content is really built for, ensure that we're targeting the right audience to register. So I'll jump into the whole hybrid thing. And I think that to your point, Elizabeth, there is no one definition, and everybody probably has their own definition. And for us, I'll tell you what we're doing. We kind of are looking at all ends of the spectrum. We've done, and I don't know if you'd actually call it hybrid, but we've had some hosted buyer events where we've had suppliers who really wanted to participate, but were not going to travel and be in person. And so we were able to have our hosted buyer event in person in Arizona, where suppliers could Zoom for their one-on-one meetings. We've done some on our spa and beauty events in Vegas last month. We actually recorded content. So, certain sessions that we then provided in a virtual environment 2 days after the in-person event. And moving into the second half of the year, we're doing kind of continuing to move towards that more streaming. So we're doing some events where we actually are streaming certain segments, keynotes, and kind of the more general sessions that are for a larger audience, and streaming those while we are actually, so we have a virtual audience as well as the physical in-person audience. And I think, and then all the way to where you can stream the whole event, which we have one event later this year we're planning to stream from beginning to end. And so when you start thinking about what hybrid means for you, there's a lot of questions you need to answer about the technology. I'm sitting in front of my computer participating in this, live physical event, or I'm there in person. I have a question, or I want to ask a question. What's the platform you use to make sure that everyone, that polls are delivered, that questions can be answered, and everybody can see what's communicating. And I think also just you're streaming for the audience in person, but you're also streaming for a virtual audience. You have to have the right production company, you have to have the right number of mics, be able to make those transitions and stuff. So it can be very complex, but I think you can do a lot without it getting that complex as well.
Well, so let's talk about engagement with virtual. We talked about this the other day in our prep call, but when people are attending a virtual event, what is the expectation for engagement? I mean, the sponsors of the event and the speakers of the event and the organizers obviously are looking for engagement, right? That means people are enjoying it and liking it, but it seems like a virtual experience, it's different, as we know. And so what does a successful event mean? Does it mean that you're getting all that Q&A and that engagement, or is somebody just listening for the information and getting that? Is that enough?
Yeah, I think it's setting expectations up front, which was a big challenge for us last year. It is not an in-person event, right? And so engagement is, how long they spend. And I do think the people who would ask a question in an in-person event, a physical event, would ask virtually as well. But what you're missing, and to kind of answer your last question earlier, was I don't think virtual events will ever go away, but I also think physical events are as important as ever, and everyone still wants that serendipitous engagement, like sitting down at the lunch table or going to the bar, after the keynote session and bumping into somebody. And there's business that actually happens that way. So I think what makes a virtual event successful is that registration to attendance rate, I think, is important. So just because somebody registers, don't stop marketing to them to get them to actually attend the session. I think doing interactive, so polling obviously, but also other interactive events. And I think, was it you, Mindy Sue, that talked about doing like the Zoom conferences you guys have done, bringing people together. I think those elements layered in versus just doing a long webinar are really critical to make an event successful.
I'd like to add in, so obviously we had to transition our executive conferences. We turned them into a virtual series where we were trying to keep engagement all year long. And so instead of having 3 full days, it might be once a month or once every other month, trying to hold that audience engaged. And so, yes, there are some times where people might register, but they might not really take the time out of the day on that live event day. We have replays where before we might not have had that replay option, but we find that the in-person events really drives the engagement. Going up and visiting the sponsor booths is very different virtually than it is in person. You can have 30-minute conversations, when you're in person. Oh, let me get you another drink, or let's go get a coffee together. Let's bring in other people to this meeting. We're hearing that our sponsors want those in-person events again. The virtual events, I agree with what Rhonda said about how they're really here to stay. You reach a larger audience, which is wonderful because some people might have been restricted by travel or budget. Sometimes companies only send one person to an event, and now, you have a whole new audience, and it's really hard to take away that virtual element after people have had a taste of it for the last year and a half. Now, I do think the production cost of live streaming an event and hosting an event at the same time are going to be very difficult, but having an in-person event, I feel like, is so valuable. When we have speakers that come up to check in at registration, I already know their name. They might, they're I see their pictures over and over again. You don't have to tell me your name. I don't need your driver's license. Welcome back, Bob Gold. We're happy to have you for your 5th year. Do you get that on a virtual setting? You probably don't. But our in-person conferences, you will get that. And so, Kimberly, Rhonda, if you guys attend again, I am going to be welcoming you with flags when you attend our event, because we put a special spin. We add that concierge service with a smile, and that's why people keep coming back to our events. And so
also, you also do something kind of neat at your parks events, which is anyone who registers can connect with any other registree and have their own conversations and schedule appointments through the parks platform, which is
yes,
very
we are using a virtual platform right now that allows that. So you don't have to. Yes, we're trying to replicate as best as we can that in person. Here's my business card. It's kind of like a LinkedIn for our virtual events. And, we get a lot of compliments on that, but we're not stopping. We know that there's going to be other technologies out there. And I feel like that's one of the things that we do really well is we're always looking at new tools to bring into our marketing mix.
And that's what I want to see in 2022. I feel like webinars and virtual conferences, I love apples. And when I go to the supermarket, I really want to take a bite of a Honeycrisp and a bite of an Envy and a bite of a Red Delicious and a bite of a green apple and decide then, what do I want to buy? Well, maybe I don't want to buy anything now. I'll come back and I'll bite these apples again later. And that's what these conferences are like. With these webinars, I want a technology that lets me know how to find exactly the information I'm looking for. And I can get to that point and watch it and then get out and then get to the next point that I want to see, and somehow not have to still wait through the hour, but maybe do a 10-minute version of that I get what I need, and then I can go on to the next session.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the opportunity on the content marketing side, once you have the session content, so for instance, you know, Parks, we had 6 in-person events. We had 5 virtual platforms this past year with over 40 sessions, times, you know, however many hours each session. We have hours and hours and hours now of video content featuring, you know, the highest level executives within the technology space talking about where the growth is going to be, what the opportunities are. And so now our team is charged with, how do we further leverage this content for the industry? I mean, part of Parks Associates' mission is to help educate and inform, as well as provide our clients and the industry with the most reliable research that we have, and that we think is out there. And so how do we extend our content further? And it's something where you also have to, with our business, being an emerging tech, you know, a year ago in some industries is still a very relevant conversation. In other industries, we blew past that, you know, that moment in time, and we're somewhere else. And so you have to also be really aware of what the content is, and then how it could be, you know, potentially, I don't know if repurposed is the right way, but leveraged to create, you know, more value.
Yeah, I'm sure you have over 300 hours of webinars that you've already, you know, consumed. And you know what? They might be a nice AVOD channel that you can put together and let people go out on Samsung TV Plus or Connected TV or Amazon Fire Stick or a Roku channel, and suddenly have a broader audience for you to reach. Your content is shapeable, and everyone's content, the creation of it and the manage of it, from AVOD and fast channels and distribution and connections with other people and sharing this video content, it's never been more alive and vibrant and important.
Well, and to add on to that, I think, Elizabeth, you were saying, you know, what do we do with all of this? I think one of the big ideas behind repurposing, it's not a negative, it could be a positive. Different audiences need to hear different key points out of a webinar or out of a paper, right? So even thinking about this session, this panel that we're running, there's different sections that different companies or different executives are going to need that are much more helpful to them in the bigger scheme of things. So repurposing, it's really about harnessing and amplifying, right? So you take the important parts, you curate them for the right audiences, and then they get amplified. You're able to make that investment in the initial development of that content, whether it's written or whether it's visual or digital or creative, whatever that might be. The more you're able to use it, it's just like anything else in life. The cost per use goes down, therefore it becomes less expensive. That's a great approach for marketing for any company. So I think it gets missed a lot. I think people think, oh, I'm creating this white paper. This one white paper is going to go on our website. I want people to click and go to it. And then they don't think about the other things that they can do with it. And, you know, you take a white paper, just take that index alone. You've got, you know, if it has 25 different points of the index, you're able to create 25 different blogs, 25 different social entries. Those are all pieces that can be created and developed. And I think it's a piece that's still getting missing. That's still a missing aspect that a lot of younger and mid-sized companies, the small business market, they're just missing those. So that's an opportunity for them.
Absolutely. And I think podcasts are something that can be mentioned because we've actually been talking about this in our own team. We launched, Parks Associates just recently launched the Connected Consumer podcast. We have Mark Vina who joined our team, and he's brought his Smart Tech Check podcast along with him. But we could take all of our video content and throw it up to a podcast because we have the audio, and people love podcasts. That's an area of research we study, and there's even reference in the industry talking about, will podcasts become like the new TV because they're so popular as a form, a way to consume information, audio. So I don't know if there's any comments around podcasting.
Yeah, I mean, podcasting is still an evolving market. The biggest problem I think most companies have is, do they have the content, right? Do they have the ability to be interesting and build a new audience, or are they better off collaborating with a partner to have ongoing content? How do you build it out from scratch versus how do you leverage what's already out there for your company? And I think it does depend on your size and who you are, who you're trying to reach, and also like, what are your goals with it? I think one of the biggest things that a lot of people think are like, oh, if I build it, they will come. Duh, and it's like, okay, but will they? So, you have to think about are you better off starting from scratch? Do you start somewhere else? What are the goals? Who are you trying to reach? Because they start down one path and all of a sudden, like, oh, this is going to be a B2B podcast, and yet we're marketing to consumers. So, really having that purposeful point to what they're trying to do with it. Where are those leads going to go? How are they going to be really directed on their journey, so that every piece of that path, from the podcast to what they're directed to the action you want them to take, that's kind of the point of this. I think a lot of people miss that.
I wanted to say, I'm a big fan of history. When radio was around and dominated all communications, electrification, the roaring 20s, and then TV came along, radio was afraid TV was going to kill radio. And the movies thought that TV was going to kill movies. And there was all this battle. And then cable TV came along, and broadcasters and movie studios fought the cable operators and the cable programmers. And the pot just keeps expanding. No medium has gone away. We've been talking about the death of linear cable television for years with cord cutting. Guess what? Linear is working just fine. And maybe it's lost some subscribers and some viewers, but the ad rates have never been higher. Everything is a growing pot of what we adapt and take in. And so podcasting, it's one more medium, one more place. Have you all signed up for Clubhouse?
I have my invitation.
I didn't want to be on that platform.
I couldn't figure that one out. I jumped into the Clubhouse conversations, and honestly, I haven't been in the right conversation. I don't know. It hasn't resonated with me yet, but has anybody else successfully had a Clubhouse conversation?
I think it works if you're in a fundraising mode. It works really well. Like, if you want to get out there and talk to the IR side, you're trying to get money in, you can do that. I think that's a big part of it. There's also certain categories that I think are doing pretty well. Fitness is one that seems to have a pretty strong hold there. But I would say, without a doubt, the financial side of Clubhouse is probably the strongest place. We thought about it for media, but we couldn't figure out how to have enough control that it wouldn't kind of spiral. So we talked about trying it. We just haven't had the guts to pull it off.
Well, and I think that plays into go where your clients are, or go where your prospective clients are. If your clients or your businesses are not on Clubhouse, if they're not on Facebook, then don't spend your resources on those platforms. If you, like right now, podcasts, everybody can listen to a podcast. You can listen to it in the car. You can listen to it, on the way to activities. And so I feel like podcasting is really picking up, and don't be surprised if we turn this webinar into a podcast.
Well, and
I love that.
Platform, right? So we're talking about Clubhouse, but like Twitter yesterday killed fleets, right? Because why the hell did we need fleets when we have Reels and when we have TikTok? Like, it's all out there. Just because somebody's going to copy somebody else and do the same thing, it doesn't mean everybody's going to come and get it. So, like, prioritizing your platforms, where you're going to be, whether that's podcasting, whether that's audio casts, whether that's virtual events, whether it's live events, like you kind of got to be like, I can't do all of this well. So what can I do well, and how do I prioritize those?
Well,
I was
it's
just going
definitely
to
a
jump in and
challenge. Yeah, Rhonda, jump in here. I mean, that mix of activities in trying to find the balance along with resources, budget, messaging, content. I mean, there is a lot there to
I
look at.
just want to say I love the idea. I'm going to steal it of repurposing, and I would say repurposing webinars as podcasts. You know, we launched podcast at the end of 2019, and one of the challenges some of our markets had is the frequency, right? You can't do one once a month or every 3 months. Like there has to be, you know, valuable content constantly coming at somebody for them to actually engage long term and not just as a one-off, I think, to really leverage it. So I love that idea.
I think
So
the
yeah,
buzzword for you, Rhonda, and what you're doing at QuestX, which is so, I mean, what, almost 400 virtual events this year?
last year.
Last year, you're going to do this year. I mean, it's contextual relevance. That
Yeah.
is what we have to hold on to, contextual relevance. Are we connecting the right audience with the right message in the right place and the right geography where it's easy for them to get it? And while we talk about earned media and own media, you know, where we own our social platforms, the rest, we should talk about budgets, paid media. And Dolly Levi in Hello Dolly said, money is like manure. You have to spread it around and help things grow. And I have had so many clients that think, you know, a reporter from Requestec Fierce or another publication should just write about us because what we're doing is important. But I'm not going to spend any money with sponsorship or advertising and support that publication so it's there tomorrow. I think I should speak at a Parks event because I'm just so smart, but I'm not going to sponsor Parks and their research or participate in that because I don't need to. I'm going to hold my money to myself. That is not smart. We need to invest in the platforms, in the services, in the outlets that we think are important to us to ensure, A, we're making a statement that we're here and we care about you and we want you to care about us. And we want to invest in the future of a Parks, of a QuestX, and of all the other platforms that are out there. Very important. And now we're at a stage where money is opening up. So guys, if you're listening to this now and you're thinking about your your second half budget for this year or next year, think about what engagement looks like with the platforms that are important to you, not just, oh, I'm going to spend $7,500 on this speaking opportunity, or I'm just going to spend $3,000 on a banner ad on a Fierce site. It is about a full level of engagement. And one area I want to see change in the media world, which is every budget is kind of event or thing oriented, and it's not about a year-long kind of relationship. How can I give you this amount of money and how can we package something for the year? And then don't come back to me. Because yeah, we're good for this year. Let's make it work, and next year we'll do something more. That to me is the next phase of sponsorship and engagement, I think.
Yeah, agree.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. And we're actually working on our 2022 plans, which will be a rolling schedule, leveraging our events and custom marketing activities as you know, half-long, year-long, ongoing visibility opportunities, and using our research that comes out to help companies, you know, get that visibility in the market. We only have a couple more minutes here, so I think I'd like to close and just see if each of you can share with me something about 2022, maybe a challenge or what's the biggest opportunity. And Bob, I'm going to start with you. I'll finish the question now, but just give you a heads up, we're coming to you first. You know, what is the biggest challenge or opportunity for B2B marketers in 2022? For me, a little bit is still the uncertainty of what's going on. And when I talk to our clients, they're uncertain. And so we're in that uncertain zone still, which is uncomfortable, but you know, we'll continue to push through it. And Bob, will go to you next.
Yeah, so I'm in a new place. I think Kimberly's at this as well, where we are turning down business that 3-4 months ago I would have taken on because we're full up at the club here. And until I can hire more people, that is going to freeze what we're able to do. And I really think that's the nub of all of us right now, is people are changing their lives post-COVID. They're changing their location because they can work from anywhere. They're changing their status of their relationships. They're changing what they do, where they work. People are seeing life is short. We got to move on. So that's the challenge, is really a human resources. How do you retain and how do you acquire new employees to grow your business?
Great. Yep, that's a really great point. Let's go. How about Mindy Sue? Biggest challenge or opportunity you see for 2022?
I think finding a good balance between virtual events and in-person events. I mean, we really want to appease to our stakeholders, but are we going to have a successful event if we can't get attendees comfortable enough to come to in-person events? I would love to have the problem that we're turning away business. So Bob and Kimberly, if you guys have too much business, we will take on those projects for you. Really just staying on the edge of the technology and the tools that are out there that can help us in our marketing mixes.
Great, thank you. Rhonda, how about you?
I think a little bit of both what Mindy Sue and Bob said. Staffing for me personally and getting the right people in the right job. I mean, at the rate our digital services are growing, I really need good team members. But I think the biggest challenge and opportunity for QuestX is, how do we get the hybrid event right? How do we make sure it's of high quality, that both physical attendees and virtual attendees get true value out of it, as well as our exhibitors and sponsors get the value they expect? I think getting it right is going to be what's important for us.
Yeah.
Ron, if anyone figures this out, it's going to be you.
Wow, I've got a lot of good, smart people I get to work with, so it'll be us together, I think. Takes a village, Bob. It takes a village.
I think we're facing the need of clients, companies, for business acceleration. They want to propel forward, but they're facing challenges from whether it's workplace design, moving to a remote model, what they're spending on their marketing, digital, what do they outsource, what do they bring internal, how do their communications, their total communications change to their audiences. It's a lot of undertaking, with human resources being a mainstay problem for everyone. So as we look to 2022, there's going to be a lot more choices, right? What do they prioritize? What do they pick? You can't do it all. Everybody wants it all, but you can't do it all. So what can you do? What can you do really well? And what actually will have measurable impact on your business that you're able to show up the chain, whether that's sales, whether that's acquisition, whether that's attendees, whether that's press coverage. It kind of plays across all of the spaces for all of us. So I think that's what we're going to face. I think we're going to look back in 18 months and go, did we do it? Or did we only do part of it well? Or did we do none of it well? And there's going to be a lot of learning still in this next 12 months for us. And that's cool. I think learning is the best part of my job. So, kind of being put in the hot seat. Can we do it? How are we going to pull this off?
Yeah, the ability to change has been top of everybody's list, I think, in the past year. I mean, if you didn't want to, it didn't matter. You were forced, kind of, no matter what your view on that is. So I want to thank you all for joining us. It's been a great conversation. I look forward to talking with you all again. And so thank you for being here today.
Thanks for having us.
Connected consumers, Thanks for tuning in to yet another awesome episode. If your company is interested in continued visibility during our executive conferences, please visit the link in the description as we are continuing our Parks Associates Connected Health Summit virtual series next week and have great opportunities to share with you. Remember to subscribe to our weekly Parks Associates podcast, Smart Tech Check, with industry veteran Mark Vina, if you want to get the latest trends on the smart home, home automation, security, and so much more. And as always, we want your feedback. Please feel free to leave a review on Apple Podcasts and tweet at Parks Associates to let us know what you think and what you'd like to hear next.
The Connected Consumer.